Hey everyone, my name is Mac and welcome to my YouTube channel. If you recognize my voice, it might be because you listen to my podcast, Master of a Few. If you do, thanks. If you don't and you want to, head on over to, it's on a lot of places, but you can find it at anchor.fm / Master of a Few. Or you can find it on Apple Podcasts and Google Podcasts and Overcast and Pocket Casts. There might be a few others, but there you go. It's called Master of a Few. I put out a new segment every Friday-ish. Because sometimes I don't get to it. Anyway, but here, welcome to this new thing I'm doing. If you listen to the podcast, then you know this was going to happen because I announced it this past week, like 2 days ago. It's Sunday, so 2 days ago. You heard about this. If you didn't know this was happening, then surprise. Yeah. So like I said, my name is Mac. I am FTM Transgender, so female to male transgender. I was assigned female at birth, but I identify as male. I'm also straight, so I'm attracted to women because I'm a straight guy. People tend to get mixed up on that. I don't know why. But anyway, there you go. That's how I identify. If you want to know more or see some pictures of my transition thus far, I've been out for 3 years now. Very exciting. Going on 4, because that's how time works. Duh. Then you can check out my transition timeline video. It's called Making of Mac, 1997 to 2019. It is on this channel. How is my cord tied around like my microphone? Sorry about that. Yeah, I'm using this setup because this is what I use for my podcast, because I have an external microphone, but it doesn't record very well. It sounds raspy, and this thing records great, so that's what we're using. So you're just gonna have to deal with a headphone dealio thing. I don't know. I could, I guess, like have them down around my neck and just have the microphone up, but it's just this is what I'm doing. So we'll see if it continues. But anyway, sorry, I'm rambly. That's just the thing you're gonna have to get used to. Once again, if you listen to my podcast, you're well aware of how rabbit traily and rambly I get. It's my inner fundamentalist coming through, I think. Okay, so anyway, so that is me. Anything else pertinent information you need to know about me before I launch into what I want to talk about? Not that I can think of. Okay, so the first thing I wanted to do is I wanted to tell my coming out story, and I tried to do this already, but it got really, really long and confusing. So I might split it up into 2 parts. So part 1 will be before coming out as transgender. Part 2 will be coming out as transgender, is I think what we might do. Now I might say that, and this might be the whole thing. So don't hold me to that. I make no promises. Okay, so let's get started. The first thing people want to know is, did I always know I was trans? And the answer is absolutely not. I didn't even know that being transgender was a thing until college is when I found out that that was a thing. And so I had no idea what transgender meant. Now, did I know I was different? Yes, that I did know. It's actually kind of funny. From the age of 5 all the way to 16, I honestly, truly believed that I was half boy, half girl, and no one was going to tell me because my parents already had my older brother and they wanted me to be a girl. I had this big conspiracy theory worked up. I thought people at my parents' church knew and they were just choosing not to tell me, and I was going to try really, really hard to play along. And it was actually a running joke among my church friends and I that I was just really, really bad at being a girl. And I know there's no right or wrong way to be a girl, I know. But in my case, I just wasn't one, and that's why I was so bad at it. Go figure. And so I grew up with no idea that that was a thing. I just knew that there was something different. But I didn't realize I was transgender till way, way, way down the road. The first thing I had to do was find out that I liked girls, and that in itself was quite a process because growing up hyper fundamentalist independent Baptist, in fact, the church I grew up in calls themselves independent fundamentalist Bible believing Baptists. I haven't said it in so long I messed it up. My queer friends that I made during college, spoiler alert, made queer friends in college. We used to laugh, and whenever I talk about my church, they would all in unison jump in with independent fundamentalist Bible believing Baptists. And it was kind of funny because they all like memorized it, and it would just roll off the tongue. But that's how I grew up. So a definitive bubble as far as LGBT things went. I didn't even know that was a thing. I only heard the word gay when people would whisper about my old Cubbies teacher, who apparently left the church and left his wife and became gay. And that is all I ever heard. So I had no idea what being gay was, but, well, I knew what being gay was. I'd figured that one out. I went to a public school, so I'd figured that one out. But as far as I knew, that was a choice you made, and it was it was one of the worst sins you could commit. And it was a choice that people made because they didn't want to serve God. That's what it was in my head. And so I knew that was not going to be me. And in fact, it's kind of ironic because when I realized around 14 or so that I was called into the ministry, I thought there are two areas of ministry that I'm being called to. One is ministering to individuals with disabilities, which is still something that I'm very, very passionate about. I did my undergrad in special ed. Like, that is a thing that I'm for sure called to. And the second was ministering to at the time I said the homosexual community, to bring them back to Christ. That's what I said I was going to go into ministry for. A lot of people still don't know that about me, so if you know me in real life and you're hearing that for the first time, I know. I cringe with you. I hear you. And people at my parents' church, when I only told a select few about that calling, and they were like, wow, that's a really special calling. I don't know many people who would go and work with that community. And I was like, well, they need the Lord too. And they're like, you're right, but that's a tough calling. And I was like, okay. And I found out way later on why that was such a intense calling for me. Go figure. So now we're going to fast forward to junior year of high school. At this point, I have started at a new school. I am dating a boy. We have known each other our entire lives. I told him when I was 5 years old that I would marry him. I never liked any other boy, and so I just decided that that was confirmation that he was the boy I was supposed to marry. I was not happy in the relationship. He knew I wasn't happy in the relationship, but I was staying in it, and I just sort of figured that we weren't super sappy and weird in my head because we were more mature than that. I think a lot of queer people tell themselves that beforehand. If they're like with someone of the sex or gender they're not attracted to, they just tell themselves that the reason why they're not actually attracted to them is because they're just more mature than that. And that's what I thought, is that like we're more mature, we don't need to be all lovey-dovey but he was, and so that was confusing to me. So I was just like, well, I'm more mature than that. Go figure. Not true at all. But anyway, I was dating him, and then first day of junior year hit, and I met a girl. And it's a tired old trope, but it happened to me as well. She was my best friend, my best friend. We became super close, super fast. She ended up tutoring my boyfriend in math, which became awkward really quickly because I would show up early to school and sit in on their tutoring sessions, and my boyfriend thought it was to see him. It was to see his tutor, which is a funny story now, but at the time it was very disconcerting for me because I knew that I was there to see her, and I couldn't figure out like why I wasn't feeling that way about my boyfriend, but like I wanted to be around her all the time. Like my boyfriend and I would go on dates, and I would usually talk about her the whole time, which, I mean, they were friends too, so it wasn't terrible at the same time. Whew, should have known. But I was oblivious, or maybe not oblivious so much as in denial. I was in hardcore denial. And so, fun fact about me, I write poetry. And so around this time, I wrote a poem. It's one of my favorite poems I've ever written. It's called Infinity Times Forever. And it's about that girl. And I wrote it, and one of our mutual friends read it, and she looked at me and said, "It's about this friend, right?" And said, "Yeah." She goes, "You know this isn't a friend poem, right?" And I was like, "I don't know what you're talking about. What do you mean?" She's like, "Yeah, this isn't a friend poem. This is like I would have this read at my wedding kind of poem." And instantaneously my world came crashing down. Well, not quite yet, but I was panicking because if one person knew, then that means I wasn't subtle enough anymore, and I was terrified. And I didn't know anything about what it meant to be queer. And so she was like, it's okay, it's okay. I was like, "No, you don't understand. That's a choice. I'm not gay. I didn't make that choice. What are you talking about? It's not true." She's like, "Okay, if you say so." And I like swore her to secrecy. No one else was gonna know. But I did. I fell in love with my best friend. And so I broke up with my boyfriend because I was super unhappy. He knew I was unhappy. It was not a healthy relationship at all. And I broke up with him finally. And I was not going to tell my best friend that I had feelings for her ever. And when I moved away to college, 4 hours away, I thought, here we go, this is going to solve my problem, because clearly it was just a one-time thing, a one-time crush, because I'm not choosing to be gay. I'm not doing it. So I get to college and I'm like, there we go, see, problem solved. 4 hours away, we're still friends, but we're not talking as much. This is fine. This is fine. November, freshman year happens, and I like had tried to pretend have two crushes on two guys, and it was just not working. And then November happens, and I go back to my parents' house, and through a series of very unfortunate events, my parents read all of the text messages that I had sent to that mutual friend, the one who knew. And so in one fell swoop, one horrible, horrible night, my parents found out that I was in love with my best friend. They found out that I was depressed, and they found out that I had been self-harming. Which, fun fact about fundamentalists, they don't believe mental illness is a thing in general. Some of them do, but the vast majority think that mental illness just means that you're not praying hard enough, you don't have enough faith. And so I was terrified, and my parents were disgusted, and that's what they told me. They told me it was disgusting, that I would be in love with my best friend, that I would be depressed, and I was so ungrateful, and that I would be self-harming. They said it was disgusting, and they threatened to take me out of school. I convinced them not to. I told them it was a one-time thing, that it would never happen again, and they said, all right, fine. So I went back to school actually the next day, and that is when I hit an all-time low. I was so depressed that I scared my friends. I got back to school, I took down every single picture in my dorm room, which terrified my roommate. I wouldn't talk to anyone about it. They had sort of figured out what was going on, but I wouldn't talk about it. I was so depressed, and I was having suicidal thoughts, and I was still self-harming, and it was bad. At this point, I finally decided to tell one of my RAs, because she knew something was wrong. And so I finally told her that I was in love with my best friend, and she said, yeah, I kind of figured. But hey, there's this group starting up on campus that one of the campus ministries people is starting, and it's for students who experience same-sex attraction. Maybe this will help you. And it turned out a couple other people that I sort of knew were going, and so I went, and it was called Christianity Congruence Conversation. And I'll talk about this at a different point, but it was sort of a low-key conversion therapy deal. At the time, I didn't know that. And I was so desperate for any sort of community that it didn't even matter to me. But I got there, and it was all about trying to find a way to live in congruence with our faith, being individuals who experience same-sex attraction. And at the time, where I was theologically then is not at all where I am theologically now, but that's unimportant to the story at the moment. So what happened is each week, one of us would tell our story. And so it was finally my turn on February 16th, 2016. And I'm a second semester freshman, and I'm sitting there and I start telling my story, and I start talking about my best friend who I fell in love with, and talking about how I sort of always knew that there was something different about me, but I wasn't sure what it was. And that night was the first time ever that I ever said out loud, I'm gay. And the feeling that it gave me to just finally admit that I liked girls was so, so freeing. My friends and I nicknamed that day Gay and Okay Day, and there's a picture of me like rocked back in a chair in a yellow shirt with my fedora on with like purple letters in front of it that say I'm gay and it's okay. And it was an amazing evening. And after that, I very haphazardly, without thinking about how it might affect the people I was telling, which was not smart, and I paid for it, came out to all of my freshman year friends, lost 90% of them, because they were all super conservative too, and for some reason I thought that since it was such a huge relief to me, it wouldn't be a big deal to tell them. It was. And it was a whole thing that I'm sure I'll tell the story later, but I lost most of my friends. But I all of a sudden had this queer community on campus. We had an unofficial group that I joined and later became vice president and president of, but suddenly I had this community, and I was out at school and was able to say for the first time, I'm gay and it's okay. And God loves me anyway, and it wasn't a choice I made, and it was a phenomenal feeling. I'd like to say that after that, things were easy, but no, that is not true. Because there's a meme of, I think it is his name Jim from The Office. Sorry, I don't watch The Office. But there's this meme where it's like, I figure out my sexuality, yay, everything's fixed. And then there's that picture of him like peeking through the blinds. It's just like, my gender. Yeah, that was me. Because I thought, voila, this is the thing that I've been like feeling like there was something I was hiding for so long. I figured it out. I didn't figure it out. That was part one. Part one was finding out I liked girls. Part two was realizing I wasn't one, which I will talk about in the next video, because I don't want this to be forever long, and we're gonna hit 20 minutes probably. So part two will be how I came to realize I was transgender. So up till now, we are now in March of 2016, because March 7th is the day I told all of my hyper-conservative friends from freshman year, hey, this is who I am. I'm not apologizing for it anymore. If you can stick around and love me anyway, great. If you can't, fine. And that was a big deal. And I will tell that story in more detail. In fact, I'll tell that story now. So I had a big group. There were 15 of us. We were unhealthily close. I kind of started a cult by accident. It was not a great situation. Those of us who now talk about it later on all kind of agree. It was one of those situations where things shouldn't happen freshman year, and they did. It was weird. But when I came out, I just sort of haphazardly started telling them. And because I was so relieved, I figured they would be too. They weren't, which if I had thought about it, I would have known. And come to find out, a couple weeks later, they had been having secret meetings about me, about whether or not they could remain my friends, and one of them had accidentally told me. And so I was enraged. I was furious. Like, that word does not even do it justice. And that's the first time I lost time, which is a thing we can talk about at another point. But on March 7th, we all gathered, all 15 of us, in this massive meeting where I was going to confront them about the fact that they'd had secret meetings. And so we all got together in a classroom, and I stood up and I said, look, what you did is not okay. You don't get to have secret meetings about somebody and try to decide whether or not you can remain their friend. Like, that's not a thing you do. And I understand that many of you think that me coming out is wrong. I get that. But this is who I am. I'm not going to apologize for it. It's not a decision I made. I'm not ashamed of it. And so if you can get behind me, and if you can still be my friend, and if you can love me with this part of who I am, then great. But if you can't, I don't need you. This is who I am. I'm proud of who I am. End of story. And it was a big night for me. It's the night I say that, my birth name's kind of obvious. We're just going to go for it. I say that that's the night that Mackenzie died and Mack was born. My brother had told me since I was 9 years old that I would die when I was 19. Yeah, I know. It's a messed up thing. We can get into family dynamics later, but it's a thing he always said. And he was right. Mackenzie died when she was 19, and Mack was born. And that is the birthday I picked for Mack, is March 7th. Because that's the day I owned who I was and said, if you can't get behind that, I'll find people who will. And it was a great day. So that's when I came out as liking girls. At the time, I came out as gay, which later on turns out super straight, but that's something we'll get into next time. Thank you for listening and for watching. I can say that now because YouTube, you can see me. Stay tuned for the next installment of this that will probably honestly be up at the same time. But part 2, how I came out as trans. Thank you so much for watching. Again, if you want to check out my podcast, you can do that, Master of a Few. Also, my book is available. I told you I write poetry, so there's a book called Confessions of the Careful Poet available on Amazon. It includes Infinity Times Forever if you want to read the Not So Friend poem. It's in there. Yeah, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time. Have a brilliant day. Bye.